All right, today's talk is called The Way Out of Perfectionism. So, the reason why I chose this topic is because this is something that I have really been saturated in the last few weeks. I've been practicing surrendering, and this is what has come up for me. When we practice surrender, we start to experience the things that we've actually been controlling and avoiding, because surrendering is about allowing whatever it is that we're trying to hold back from. It starts to come into our being, and we start to experience it as a way to be able to surrender to it. So my shtick is perfectionism, and what perfectionism is, it is a compensation that we use to deal with shame or unworthiness or some sort of undesirable state that we don't want to either feel or see in ourselves, or we don't want others to see in us. So what we do is we compensate for it by doing things in our environment, like making ourselves look really presentable, looking like we have it all together, presenting a really nice, clean house. It's all of this material stuff that we end up masking with our vulnerabilities or the things that we don't want people to see. And that's really what it's about. The opposite of perfectionism is authenticity, and it's about taking off the mask and showing up, right? And that's why we become perfectionists, because we don't feel worthy, we don't feel safe, we don't feel confident, and to bring forth our authentic self, so we bring forth this perfect version of ourselves. So really, at the end of the day, the work that needs to be done when we're finding our way out of perfectionism is surrendering. So surrendering is going to be unique to each individual, because each individual has their own individual hang-ups. And for myself, my hang-up was growing up gay and not feeling comfortable, not feeling confident, and not feeling worthy of love or acceptance. And I developed this mask that I wore to prevent people from seeing my own lack of self-worth, but also prevent people from seeing things in me that were undesirable that would reinforce my lack of worth or confidence in myself. So over the course of many years, decades now, I've used this mechanism as a way to really almost repress these feelings of unworthiness. And in the last few weeks here, I've been really allowing these feelings to come up. And this is obviously a precursor to this course I'm developing. I'm developing a course for gay men, teaching them how to take off their mask and step into their authenticity. Well, funny enough, my own shit's come up, and this is a challenge I'm now having to face, is to get into this place where I can actually teach from a place of authenticity and not just practice, or not just preach and not be practicing what I'm preaching. So a lot of this work I'm actually going to be doing as I go through this course, which is kind of cool, because I'm going to be able to teach people the things that I'm actually in the middle of learning myself, which is, I think, one of the most effective ways to be able to deliver a very authentic message. So anyway, I think a lot of my perfectionism actually stems from a fear of failure, because when I fail, it really reinforces this belief that I have that I'm not worthy or that I'm not good enough. So I mask this with this whole persona around me of having it all together, and I only put myself in these situations or positions where I'm gonna flourish. And up until recently, I've actually been doing the opposite. I've stopped doing fitness as much, and I'm doing more yoga. And this is a completely brand new area where I'm not good. I'm not good at doing headstands, handstands, all this other stuff, and I'm actually very new to it. And it's challenging me by making me have to come out of this idea that I have to be perfect, and that it really is about progress, not perfection. I love that saying, because that really gives me the space to just be myself and allow myself to progress in increments, and not feel like I have to show up as perfect right away. Okay, so one of the most important things we want to know on this journey of perfectionism is that we need to be aware of the language we use with ourselves, because this is how we become perfectionists. Perfectionism is really a form of punishment that we use to motivate ourselves to move away from our truth, to move away from our authenticity. But we don't see it as that. We see it as we're stepping into this greatness, because it's the delusion of greatness. It's the denial of the lack of worth for self. So we actually project that we're stepping into this greatness through perfectionism, but really we're just stepping further and further away from ourselves. So perfectionism is actually stems from an inner bully that we use to basically destruct ourselves or deconstruct ourselves. So we feel like we aren't good enough, so we have to do more and more and more. And there's actually a body of research that shows that when we talk negatively about ourselves and we bully ourselves, we actually our neurobiology is actually affected the same way as when somebody else bullies us. So we get a rise in cortisol in our bodies. Our digestive system actually becomes compromised. There's lots of things that actually come out in this body of research, and the opposite of inner bully is actually being an inner coach to yourself and speaking to yourself with warmth and with being gentle and talking to yourself in a way that's gonna make you feel safe. That's a big asset that we can offer ourselves. So one of the most important questions that's helping me get through this stuff is asking myself, in moments where I feel the need to be perfect or right, or that I'm not feeling like what I'm doing is good enough, I ask myself, how can I be more gentle with myself in this moment? This has been such a profound question for me, because it stops me in my tracks and it allows me to see things clearly, and it allows me to take that step from my head into my heart, because the heart is where we're gentle with ourselves. This is our inner coach. This is our inner bully, right? So we need to ask ourselves that question: how can I be more gentle with myself in this moment? Because that is the antidote to perfectionism. That is the antidote to unworthiness, feeling unlovable, unacceptable. All of these emotions, they really get light shone on them when we ask ourselves that question. So that's step number one. Through asking yourself that question, you start to notice how you think about yourself, because when we're coming from a place of perfectionism, we're actually complaining about ourselves, but not actually really seeing it as that. So it's a complaint versus a compliment. The coach is going to compliment you, the bully is going to complain about you. And when we complain about ourselves, that is the fuel to perfectionism. Because when we're complaining about ourselves, we're using those complaints as motivation to move forward, but we're actually moving forward and away from ourselves, right? So this is the key. So in these moments of feeling not good enough, or that you feel like you have to do more and more and more, and we're in this doer state, it's very important to compliment yourself, right? Like, ask yourself, when was the last time you applauded yourself versus punished yourself, right? Applauding ourselves takes a lot more courage than punishing ourselves, because punishment it's just a cheap and easy way to try and motivate yourself. Whereas applauding yourself, you actually have to look at yourself and you have to say, what am I doing well? What am I doing good in this moment that I can actually step up to the plate and give myself a nice applause, right? Because that's what this is about. And people always ask me, how do you develop self-love? How do you develop self-worth? How do you develop self-acceptance? And that is how we do it. We do it through applauding ourselves when we do things that in the big scheme of things, we might think they're small, but just sometimes getting out of bed in the morning when you feel like shit, that's a thing to applaud yourself for, right? And all too often, we're so hard on ourselves, and we think that we have to, graduate university before we can applaud ourselves. It's like, no, we need to take a step back, and we need to start to recognize all of these small achievements that we're making along the way, because those small achievements all add up to make the big differences in our lives. So why would we not applaud ourselves as we move forward? So oftentimes shame is one of the biggest motivators that people use to motivate themselves, and they don't realize it because it's masked in other things. It's masked in punishment, it's masked in perfectionism. So we need to be very aware that we're actually tapping into shame or shame triggers in our environment to motivate us to say, oh, I'm not quite good enough yet, so I got to keep moving, I got to keep going, I got to keep, orchestrating this perfect orchestra around me so I can feel a sense of worth. Or at that point, it's not even a sense of worth, it's an avoidance of shame, right? It's saying that if I orchestrate all these things around me, I'm going to feel less triggers in my environment for me to experience shame. Well, an absence of shame doesn't necessarily equate to a presence of worth or love, right? We need to move from that journey of quitting shaming ourselves, and then we can start moving into bringing and inviting presence of love and worth into ourselves, okay? So for me, yoga has actually been a very big part of this journey for me in exposing some of these shame triggers and helping me move away from perfectionist thinking and into more of an authentic validation of self. And what this is it's one of the biggest things with yoga for me is it's been slowing me down. My perfectionism, it comes at me very, very aggressively, and it comes at me very, very fast paced. I'm a quick thinker, I'm a quick doer, and I love doing in order to get achievement and to get that sense of accomplishment. So what yoga's done is, for me, it's actually slowed my body down. And for the longest time, for probably 15 years being involved in fitness, my mind has been leading my body. Okay, telling my body where to go. And now in yoga, I'm actually allowing my body to lead my mind. So when I'm moving slow in yoga and I'm flowing through these movements and using my breath, my mind is following suit and it's becoming a lot calmer. And a calm mind is not a mind that's conducive to perfectionism, because perfectionism is about do, and it's about fast paced, and it's about accomplishing, right? So slowing your movements down is also a big thing. And that doesn't mean you have to go into yoga. It just simply means that maybe you get up in the morning and you just move slower, and you don't just start race to your phone and look at what do I got to do. Just allow yourself to ease into your day, and allow yourself to ease into each moment, allow yourself to ease into each choice you make, and don't be so impulsive in how you're moving yourself forward in your life. This is going to be a big asset that you can bring forward into helping you find your way out of perfectionism. So what I want to leave you guys with is some insight into how you can start to see what it is that you need to surrender to. What is your pattern? What is your hang up in your life? What do you keep getting tripped over? For me, it was this feeling of unworthiness, feeling of not being good enough. And that is what was fueling my perfectionism. And that is what I'm needing to surrender to right now. So I'm allowing myself to just embrace imperfection. I'm allowing myself to have a messy house. You should see my stuff is all over the place, and I look at it and my inner being is like screaming, but I'm allowing myself to breathe through that and approach those moments with calm and with acceptance that this is something that I'm just practicing, and it doesn't always have to be set in stone. You can just take it moment by moment. So ask yourself that. What are you getting hung up on? What do you need to surrender to? And start to invite that into your life. Start to invite that word surrender. For a lot of people it sounds so scary, but it kind of is, right? It's been a very, very tough couple of weeks, but on the other side of this tunnel that I'm going through right now is this version of myself that I've never actually felt before, and it's this freedom that I've never actually felt before, and I'm just getting a taste of it. I'm not quite there, and it already feels pretty cool. So I invite you into that journey with me. Have a beautiful day.